welcome to On Track GP right here on DR Sports. It was Monaco this weekend. It's not everyone's favourite. It's definitely not mine. And it was a good one. We saw a different driver on top of the podium once again. Joining us to discuss and dissect is Rich and Robbie. Monaco, it's all about the showbiz of it, isn't it? The flair, the boats and the parties. But as a track, it's not the best.
No, it's not. Not for racing. I think for like a time attack and, just one car on its own trying to do the fastest lap, street circuits are always rewarding for that. But the cars are just too fast and too big for the layout now. The circuit hasn't changed pretty much since the 1920s. And as cars have evolved, they've just become too big. But as you said, it's about the show with Monaco. And the event is actually really awesome if you go there. But it's, the race was one of the most boring races you'll ever see.
Yeah, it's super narrow and it's well renowned for its red flags. That didn't disappoint, did it, this weekend?
No, but I'd love to go there. I mean,
to go there, it's a great race.
I mean, listen, right? My friend was out there. He was sending me videos of him on this yacht. It was awesome, and I'll tell you, so I can see why they keep that race because, like you said, the setting of it. When you look at those aerial shots,
and they probably
all
do
the yachts. It's what F1's all about, isn't it? It's like
exactly.
And there was a bit of drama. Look at the crash at the start.
No, but that's that's exactly what you have to have in Monaco for it to be a good race.
Yeah, well, we had it, innit? It was like, to me, I know everyone's going. It was all right. It was a bit of a procession in the end, but at the start of the race.
It was full on.
I don't think that we need to be banking on having red flags in a race to make F1 interesting or make it a good track.
I mean, the other thing with Monaco, though, is probably 75% of the sponsorship deals for the whole year will get done there. Yeah. Because if you want to impress some guests and get a few more zeros from the checkbook, you take them on the yacht at Monaco and it can can be quite effective. And
also, it's like literally every driver's home Grand Prix.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they all live there.
You saw Charles Leclerc, I don't know if you saw the clip, he rode his bike from his apartment to the circuit. And there's a clip of him riding home after the race.
Well, he is actually Monegasque, isn't he?
He is a Monegasque.
He is. So, and of course, he did take pole, and it was his weekend. But as I mentioned before, red flags. There was quite a few. I mean, even in free practice, Shogun Yu, he hit the barriers. There was a red flag there. Free practice 2, we seemed to escape without having one. Free practice 3, red flag. Valtteri Bottas hit the outside barrier at the second swimming pool chicane. I just feel like we can't bank on red flags to make it an interesting race. Yeah. And this was even before we got to quali. But is that not a sign that maybe if there's so many red flags in one particular race, there needs to be some amendments to it?
Yeah, I think that people are starting to think now with Monaco, is it possible to do anything to the circuit? Because, Monaco is a big city. There's ways that they can keep going straight on at the first corner. There are other roads within Monaco. Is there something now that cars have kind of outgrown the circuit? Do we have to make some changes? Because you saw after when the race got going again, even though drivers were driving so slowly to try and preserve the tyres, as long as you made sure you nailed your traction zones, you didn't even have to nail it. You just needed to not really screw it up. Then there was no way anybody was going to overtake you. The DRS had no effect. And yeah, it's just one of those places where it's just the cars have outgrown the circuit. I was there in 2022, which is the first year of these ground effect cars, and you saw them going around there and you thought, my God, these things look huge there. They look way too big for the circuit. And I think we just saw an example of that over the weekend.
It's slower than most races, isn't it? Like the speeds they get up to. I saw like Lewis Hamilton suggesting that maybe like sort of compulsory pit stops. Like maybe you have to have 3. Yeah. That would then switch up. That might do something for it, because both him and Verstappen in it, they're going it's boring and stuff like that.
Because they were just conserving the tyres. Because
they wouldn't have said that if they was winning, by the way.
Of course, no, they would have said it's the best race ever. But because they were having to conserve tyres the whole time, it meant that they were all driving so far off the pace. And that was the red flag on the first lap meant that they could switch tyres. So everyone was trying to do the race without stopping. But if you had Pirelli either bring a really high degradation tyre to that event, or you force people to do a few pit stops so everybody was flat out for the whole race, you'll see more mistakes, which leads to more overtaking. But when everyone's driving, 5 seconds off the pace, I can't tell you how slow 5 seconds off feels when you're in a racing car. Yeah. I mean, it's just, honestly, it's like you're driving to the shops.
Which is crazy when you think about it. But then I guess if you're looking at it or watching it in the flesh, 5 seconds does make a lot of difference. You see the car go past like that, and then 5 seconds is quite a long time, and watching it physically there. Let's talk about kind of how good Charles Leclerc was, and obviously the Ferraris this weekend. He was pretty much untouchable, even in free practice. Finished fastest ahead of Verstappen and Hamilton, and it is one of those circuits that whoever kind of does the best in qualifying, which we'll get into, tends to usually stay in that pole position. Why were they so good?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I mean, as I said, Monaco is always a weird one because it is so unique. The teams, a bit like Monza, they normally bring a special package for Monaco just because you want as much downforce as you can get on the car. And it's one of those which suits teams at certain times. So is it a trend where we can now say, okay, Ferrari is going to be a dominant team and Red Bull's going to be stuck in the midst where they were? I don't think so, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. They're definitely on an upward trajectory.
Definitely. They've looked better, especially both drivers as well, especially this season. In qualifying, out in Q1 was Alonso, Sargent, Perez, Bottas and Zhou. So there's 2 surprises there, which would be Alonso and Perez. Alonso, again, not having the best of weeks.
No, again, I think qualifying, it just didn't work out for him, It was just, 2 in a row, so... I'm sure there's an explanation behind it that we don't know of yet. But he'll be back. But I think that Perez is obviously a huge disappointment, and that was ultimately what led to his issue in the race.
Again. What's your view on the Perez situation?
Well, I've said it before. It's like, how's this guy still?
He's about to get another contract, though. Apparently,
I know and I've said it before because of the Mexican following that he has. Because I can't see any other reason you're driving the same car as Max Verstappen, and you can't even get out of P3.
Yeah, I think the fact that he couldn't even qualify, and this was something that we spoke about all of last season as well. It became kind of a running joke. He doesn't like to make it past Q2 at any point, and now we're looking at Q1. So it's like we're raising eyebrows again because of that. And the new contract has to be for that reason, doesn't it? The financial pull.
It has to be. I mean, the thing is with Perez is, okay, your teammates with Max Verstappen, but I think everybody kind of realizes the level that Max is on and the level Perez is on. So even if he's not right up with Max Verstappen, he just has to be there when he needs to be there. A bit like Bottas was always with Lewis, And these weekends put a question mark onto that. But, there's obviously the pull, and Red Bull are happy with him and Max is happy with him. So if he's going to get that contract, then that's all that matters.
Well, from a Max perspective, of course, he's got absolutely no...
Oh, it's a perfect teammate.
There's a perfect teammate. It would help if he could come and help defend sometimes, which he was doing again the first couple of races. But I don't know. It's one to definitely keep an eye on. Out in Q2 of quali was Ocon, Hülkenberg, Ricciardo, Stroll, Magnussen. Pierre Gasly knocked Ocon out in the process of that one. We've been very critical of the Alpines. Have you seen any improvement over the last couple of races?
I mean, that was a lot better, wasn't it? All of a sudden, they're knocking on the door of the top 10, and they certainly weren't boring this race. That was for sure. So they again, Monaco is a specific circuit, so you can't look too much into it. But maybe this could be a sign of things to come. So we'll keep an eye on that one.
Danny Rick, Rob, we thought that he would be gone after Miami. He's still here. He's made it. Are we waiting until summer break, or we actually think he's going to see the whole season through?
I don't know. No,
I thought he would have been gone.
You said he'd be gone.
I thought he would have been
gone.
Everyone
thought he'd be gone.
I mean, I don't know if you saw the TV camera panning to Liam Lawson during the red flag, and he was there patiently waiting. I mean, he was just, again, he wasn't anywhere near as good as Tsunoda was, again. And I just don't know how long he can keep going.
How long he's got left. But, before we get to silly season, maybe it's just, do they just keep him for this year?
Yeah, it could be. I mean... Well, look, I mean, you have to remember they dropped Nick at Silverstone after Silverstone last year, and we're fast approaching that point. Maybe that's a cutoff that they've got in mind. They're going to give him the same chance that Nick had.
Yeah, you could be right there. Haas, it was an interesting weekend for the Haases, and we are going to talk about that when we get to the race highlights. But Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, they went out in Q2, but they were subsequently disqualified from qualifying due to DRS irregularities on the cars, and that's why they were at the back of the grid, which we'll talk about. But DRS irregularities, what does that mean?
It's basically I read the interview with Io Komatsu, and basically it was an upgraded part that they've had which they hadn't calibrated to properly to the software and the what the designers had come up with. Basically, it was effectively a miscommunication between the factory and the race team, and it's not actually something which would give them an advantage.
Okay.
But it's the rules, and if you break the rules, then you're disqualified, and that's just one of those things, and something they'll learn from.
Well, they were at the back of the grid.
Why?
Yeah,
that's my thing. Is like why?
It's quite a basic thing.
in athletics, you got disqualified, you're out.
Why'd you get to them race?
I don't understand. And then they ruined.
Because they
ruined nearly everybody's race.
Well, yeah, we're going to talk about
Yeah.
that. We're going to talk about that.
Why is that? How do they still get to race?
It's because they can then rectify it. So they're disqualified from that session. It's like, say, in athletics, if you're running a 100-meter race or something like that, but you put I don't know, you use an illegal shoe or something like that, and that puts you into the last chance heat. Well, you then go into the last chance heat. As long as you've got a legal pair of shoes on, then you can compete. So they're only out of that session. But again, if they ran it in the race, then yeah, they would have been disqualified from the race as well.
So they weren't disqualified. Because I was confused on the day, so
they got disqualified from qualifying.
Only from qualifying, yeah. So they get put to the back of the grid. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So it means you have to start from the back and on a track like Monaco,
which is a big penalty.
Well, yes, we're going to talk about that. Charles Leclerc, he did take pole ahead of Oscar Piastri, who had another brilliant week, great week for the McLarens again. Carlos Sainz was P3. Norris P4, so it was a nice little Ferrari McLaren split. Russell P5, Verstappen P6, which we don't say often. Hamilton P7, Yuki Tsunoda P8, Albon P9, great quality from him, and Pierre Gasly in P10. Look, it was a big weekend. It's one of those where all the stars show up and show out. Kylian Mbappe, Virgil van Dijk, Ben Chilwell, Diogo Dalot, fresh off an FA Cup as well. He was there on the starting grid. But as soon as we basically started, it was a red flag. Leclerc obviously held on to that lead. Sainz brought out the yellow flags early on as well. But there was a lot of stuff going on at the back of the grid between Sergio Perez and the two Hasses.
Yeah, well, more one of the Hasses. I think Nico was just the innocent bystander. I mean, it's when you watch the onboards and the replays and everything, it's 100% Kevin's fault for me. I mean, he could see what the gap was and he could see the barrier coming like that. And at that point, he's far behind Perez and he's got a clear choice whether to back out or not. Perez is completely entitled to do what he did. And it's not like Perez turned right. Yeah. He just followed the trajectory of the circuit. And I think that was a move of desperation from Magnussen because he knew he got ahead. He knows he's under pressure for next year because he's out of contract. And he managed to get ahead of Hülkenberg at the first corner. And he just didn't want to back out, and that clouded his judgment. And then the interview he gave after, I think you can tell that's a man who knows he's under a little bit of pressure. And I think that's why he didn't openly admit to it.
I was going to say that probably added some more pressure because, I mean, Sergio Perez, I mean, if whoever didn't see the car, I mean,
lucky.
He is lucky.
Guy. Lucky that car.
I don't, honestly, the cars must be built so incredibly well because I don't know how he's alive.
The only thing left is the cockpit, isn't it?
He wasn't even limping though, which is incredible because you know when you're in a crash like that, your legs do bang around in the cockpit and you do wear padding. You see a lot of the drivers have knee pads on, but it's violent. It's properly
absolutely. He's a lucky man.
It always amazed me the way these guys just get out of the car,
just like
walk off,
look at it, take their gloves off. We'd be coming out and be like,
if you go to the back of someone, he'll get whiplash. You know what I mean? It's mad.
Absolutely mad. I don't know if you've had an accident before, right? You sort of like sometimes you come out, you're shaken. You're shaken by it. You just sort of just.
Well, I'll be honest. Like I haven't ever had a crash in a road car. I've been hit up. Yeah, touch wood. I've been hit up behind a set of traffic lights at low speed. But having a crash in a racing car is way less violent than having a crash on a road. It feels a lot less violent inside the car because
look at the state of that car. Though.
But that's why it's less violent because it's literally everything is designed to fall off the car so that the energy in the shock gets dispersed effectively. When you're in a road car, your car's designed to crumple. So the shock gets taken out through the metal crumpling, but it still stays within the car. So it feels, okay, don't get me wrong, a shunt like Perez's, you definitely feel it. But I've hit tyre barriers at 100 miles an hour before in a race car, and you don't really think anything of it. You check how badly damaged the car is and if you can get the car back.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, there was no getting that car back.
That's because you drivers are crazy. That's
what you have to be.
Yeah, exactly. They're all wired a bit different.
They're different nuts, man. You know what I mean? I'd still be a nervous wreck like that.
No, 100%. I mean, the state of Perez's car, I mean, he really is lucky to be alive. He bounced off both barriers, clipped Hülkenberg
and
as well.
And it's Onco as well, not tyres. He was a very lucky guy.
Very, very lucky. Wasn't the only ones to collide before the red flag, and it was very early on that red flag. Alpines, they also collided with each other. The pair made contact. Ocon was launched into the air. Yeah. Stroll, he also touched Gasly's rear wheel in avoidance of the accident, while furiously Gasly berated his teammate on the radio. They literally hate each other. Ocon would not take the race to restart. It's just a nightmare of a start, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's not great, and Ocon deservedly got in quite a lot of trouble for that. It's not necessary, especially when the teams. It came out later that they'd had a briefing. Obviously, Alpine are struggling for points this season in that very important constructors battle, and there was apparently a meeting before the race where whoever qualified in front, they stay in front unless something happens at the first corner, and you follow suit and then work as a rear gunner for them effectively just to get those points. And so if that was said, then for Ocon to do that, it's very, very unforgivable.
Well, it's quite clear there's there's no love lost between the two of them. No. Sorry, just choking. There's no love lost between the two of them. And obviously, as we mentioned before, in terms of the qualifying, Ocon was knocked out, wasn't he, by Gasly? Yeah. So maybe there was something in that as well. But I mean, the Alpine need to sort their shit out.
Yeah, they need to. I think
there is no other way to say it. They need to.
A lot of people saying that the Ocon could be benched for next weekend after Famin's in the boss's interview. I don't think that's the case, because next is Canada, and Canada's a circuit, the junior categories. I mean, the guy who'd replace him would be Jack Doohan, and the junior categories don't go there. Canada's an extremely hard circuit anyway, and a very unique one, and now it looks like they've got a car which could be on the cusp of scoring points. I expect what it means in terms of repercussions, he'll either get a very heavy fine, and deservedly so, or it will affect his negotiations going into next year. But it wasn't the smartest move by Ocon at all.
Definitely not. The race did restart on lap 3. Sainz was reinstated to third after his little incident. It was
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Why?
So basically,
that for me, it's one of these weird things about F1. How's he's got a punch or everything, and then he gets put back into the race in his same position.
So the rule under red flag is you go back to the previous lap when the leader crossed the start line. So that order basically. So that it just, because to class the results you have to cross the timing lines to get everything official. That's the last time you had a completely official result.
But don't you think it's a bit? I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean it's
don't seem right to me, because you've got a second bite of the cherry. Like, it's like your car's, he would have dropped right back down.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. It just seems. I'm watching the race and I'm like, it seems weird.
I mean, the problem is
it's a weird rule.
It's different in different categories. Like in a lot of the American categories, as soon as the red flag or the yellow comes out, they call it based on where they are.
That's how it should be.
But then
the race is live.
But then they need you need cameras in a certain place to see, because if you've got two cars side by side for the win and there's not a camera side by side, the dramas that they would have there, it's more the easiest way for the FIA to deal with it. But I know where you're coming from. It feels like. It was a racing incident, in my opinion, between Sainz and Piastri, but still, racing incidents, you should get the repercussions for it, and he obviously got a get out of jail free card there.
Yeah.
Whereas the Haas's, for example, Nico Hulkenberg did nothing wrong, and he hasn't got a get out of jail free card.
Got penalised for it. Yeah, it's one of those ones. But yes, Leclerc, he did lead from the restart with Piastri, Sainz, and Norris all behind. It's been a really good couple of weeks from McLaren's standpoint, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, and it's good to see as well. And the thing is, they seem to be good everywhere, which is great, because I honestly believe that we're seeing the same thing that we saw last year, where their upgrade department are clearly doing stuff, and it means I think we're going to end up with, maybe not in the next couple of races, but they're going to seriously start challenging Verstappen, which is great.
Which
for
is obviously
Formula
the
One,
target. Yeah.
Obviously, we're all English, so of course we like to see McLaren and Lando doing well, and of course Piastri as well. He's a really exciting talent. I think it's going to make the next part of the season really interesting.
Yeah, and it's definitely interesting, I think, because whereas Mercedes and everyone as English people, we love Lewis as well, but because Mercedes have had such a big drop off, Lewis and George, it's now we're looking more at the McLarens to be the ones that really can challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's quite nice because we're kind of used to it and expect it from Lewis, and George also has been at the front and won races in the past. But to see the young guns come in and do it, it's always nice to have a fresh face in any sport, be it football or be it
especially when they're doing well.
Exactly,
especially when they're doing well. Max Verstappen, he did complain of battery issues on lap 60, but apart from that, he basically ended up where he started, which was P6.
So did everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and it is one of those tracks where unless you kind of qualify, you know, or,
Is it the whole top 10?
Whole top 10,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just
It was the first time in history that's ever happened.
yeah, because usually there's something like that happens to someone at the front, and it was at the back this time. But it was a home victory in Monaco for Charles Leclerc ahead of Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz in P3. Lando P4, Russell P5, Verstappen P6, Hamilton P7, Tsunoda P8, Albon P9, Gasly with the final point in P10. Obviously Ocon, Hulkenberg, Perez, Magnussen, all race
Can you imagine if Gasly had got damage from that Ocon shunt and that meant he didn't get points?
Exactly, that point is a lot.
That can change Alpine's life.
It actually can, and it's a big one. Just some more talking points from this race. McLaren had a very special livery this weekend, striking yellow and green. It was giving a bit of steak. I can't lie. I didn't love it, but I like the message behind it. It was in commemoration of the team's former 3-time world champion Ayrton Senna. He still holds the record, Senna, of the most victories in Monaco, winning 6 times, including 5 straight victories as well between 1989 to 1993. Lando and Oscar both unveiled special helmets for the weekend in commemoration as well. And the livery, I still think the tangerine is best.
Yeah, I understand why they
But I
did
like
it.
the messaging.
Yeah, the messaging was good. I agree. It's not my favorite livery, but the message was a pretty cool one.
The message was lovely. Just some other talking points. Williams this week, they confirmed the signing of Alex Albon on a new long-term deal, which is great for them. It's going to go into 2026 and beyond, as I've said. But in the week heading up to Monaco, Carlos Sainz, he's been linked with a move to Williams for 2025. It's said that he's been in advanced talks to join them in a long-term project. It's quite interesting that, because we've been saying about Audi, or is there going to be a Mercedes move for him? But Williams, do you think that's a good move?
That's an interesting move, and Williams obviously, to be able to convince Albon to a long-term deal and then potentially Sainz, they definitely know something that we don't.
That's a great driver lineup.
Yeah, because and to be able to pull that lineup off, and you're thinking to yourself, how have they managed to do that? Because you wouldn't see any hope. But again, maybe there's something going on behind the scenes in terms of an investor or something, which we don't know about, which if they do, then good for them.
I mean, we would love to obviously see, as English people, Williams back in the forefront of racing.
Williams a legendary team.
Exactly.
I mean, like
2 ex-Red Bull drivers.
Used to win titles. I mean, it'd be great to see. It'd be great. They have got something
really
up
cool.
their sleeve,
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Bottas was another one that was photographed coming out of the Williams motorhome at Imola. It's understood that he's also in the running to return to the team he made his F1 debut at. So there's lots of things obviously going on at Williams, isn't there?
I think, across the whole paddock at this time of the year, everybody is talking to everybody. Honestly, 80% of the grid will be talking to 80% of the teams.
Yeah,
it's just normal at this time of year. So, and to be honest, what you also have to remember is there's a lot of people just have a lot of friends in the paddock, people that they used to work with.
Just pop in and out.
Yeah.
F1's a small sport.
I mean, quite often when I go to the race meetings, I'll go and have a coffee in 3 or 4 different teams' hospitality, just so I can catch up with my mates who I haven't seen for a while.
Yeah.
Or to get free food.
Go where the free food takes you. Just before we wrap up, we've got a few race stats and facts, which I know you all like. It's the first time Charles Leclerc stood on the podium in Monaco. He's never finished in the top 3 in either of his F1 or F2 career.
Didn't I predict he'd come? I think I predicted he'd come second.
We might need to run the receipt on that. I think you
have
had
to check.
Max. I don't know.
Someone predicted he was going to do well. I can't remember.
I feel like we all
said
had
Ferraris would do
Ferrari in it. I don't know. We need to check that back.
Yeah.
We
I think I
should
had
run it.
Verstappen, him coming second.
It was also the first points of the season for Gasly and Albon. And as we said earlier, it's the first time in F1 history that the top 10 finished the race in the exact order that they lined up on the grid. And Charles Leclerc is the 4th different race winner of 2024 and is within 31 points of Max Verstappen at the top of the championship. So everyone who said that F1's boring is looking a lot more competitive this season.
Apart from that was the most boring race of the season.
Bar that race.
But
in fairness,
was great.
I feel like maybe it was one of those that was like, we've had such an outrageous start, let's just not rock the boat anymore.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, honestly, if we have a season where 3/4 of the race are extremely exciting and we have a few bad ones, then that's completely fine.
Exactly. Where are we racing next, Rich?
We've got Canada, which is my favourite circuit on the calendar. I love Canada.
Why is it your favourite?
It's always an exciting race. It's just one of those tracks which, again, it's not great for like a time attack or something, but the race is always good.
Yeah.
I've never actually driven it. I've never been there because it's a semi-permanent circuit. It's in a park and they only use it for F1. But it is a really, really exciting circuit. It's always a good race, and the weather's always a bit questionable there as well.
Yeah.
But it's a proper driver's circuit. The walls are closed. It's a bit old school, but unlike Imola, you can overtake there.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to it. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Rob. Please, guys, make sure you do like and subscribe right here on DR Sports for all of your football and your on-track GP updates as well. And of course, we'll be back next week when we can look ahead to Canada. See you soon.